Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Just Another Kill Team podcast, connecting kill team communities across the globe. If you're passionate about the tactical skirmish game that brings together strategy, lore, and creativity, you are in the right place. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and stay updated with our latest episodes. If you want to support the show, check out our Patreon. Your support means a lot to us. Follow us by using the social media links in the podcast description for all the latest news, and be sure to leave a review to let us know what you think. Thanks for tuning in. Here's today's episode. Hello, friends, and welcome, which I just said in the pre-recorded bit as well.
We're here with Dan, World Championship winner, although not on Warp Coven anymore.
Well, you know, winning was just getting a bit boring. What can I say?
Yeah, so you picked hard mode. You're on Hierotek Circle, CPTS. And we brought you on probably because Goremongers are one of the interesting topics. You did reasonably well with them in the recent past. So, but I mean, if you're on Hierotek and you're enjoying Hierotek, maybe there's a couple Hierotek players out there who are interested in hearing what the current World Championship has been doing with them.
Chronomancer is what I've been doing with them.
Chronomancer is the truth and the way.
The truth and the way. He's the way forward. The future and the past.
Have you even looked at the other two, or just?
I don't know. Something about crits or something. No.
Yeah.
No, it's just been yeeting people up on the teleportation. I think you mentioned a second ago that in the dark you've got a fun little cheat where you can guard with a nanomine on your opponent's barricade. So there's just no reasonable way for them to get onto the mid board.
I mean, they can get 3 inches forwards, but yeah, other than that, if they put the barricade too far forwards and then you nanomine and deathmark guard, you can absolutely snipe them before they can reach the barricade.
Yeah, and just that movement denial is huge.
Oh yeah, they're a slow team, but I always really like to play that everyone dashes forwards ploy turn 1, and then you get far up the board, and your Prentech launches someone forwards towards the end, and your guys will start further forwards. It's a really good zoning tool, I find.
Can you use that ploy on turn 1? I thought it was one of the ones that was limited to not be turn 1. But that's
no, it's allowed turn 1, which is pretty crazy.
You are kind of priced into using a reposition your scouting option to get yourself up those 3 inches, though, right? Because you pull yourself
6 inches if you do deploy and the scouting reposition.
That's pretty
spicy. Because you pull your models towards your big guys, right?
No, you can just dash them forwards.
Oh, it's just a free dash.
Yeah,
it's just a dash. Yeah.
Anyone that is within 6 inch. Okay, yeah. So this is referring to the strategy ploy command underlings, and that is so it's a strategy ploy. You choose either your Cryptek or the Apprentech. And then everyone around them can do a free dash. That aura is anyone within 6 inches for the Cryptek and anyone within 3 inches for the Apprentech. So either way, you can have a little bubble on either side, and then just kind of choose which one you want. I've noodled around a little bit, and typically I start just with 2 different clusters. So one cluster around the Apprentech and one cluster around the Cryptek. Is that kind of similar to what you've done?
I quite like to launch the Apprentech forward. I have to say, you launch him forwards with scouting reposition and then with everybody dashes, and then he gets 6 inches forwards, and then he can reposition, teleport, and then shoot through the guy he's teleported with the magnification conduits equipment. You push a guy 18 inches up the board. Time Splinter isn't wholly within either, so you've got the model's base. So you've essentially got 19 and then plus the 2 inches of, ignoring cover when you get within that range. You essentially have a 21-inch threat range, which is
meanwhile, we're out here nerfing the Sanctifiers. We should be out here nerfing the Hierotek Circle again, Dan. You're right.
Oh yeah, buff Sanctifiers for sure. Team's dead in the water now.
It does seem kind of funny that there's a couple teams that have these crazy turn 1 aggression plays. Pathfinders, I guess, are also one of those teams right now where with Montka and extra movement shenanigans, you can yeet a couple dudes up 17 inches and blow people up.
So I've given every team in the game ago now. I've been like logging my matches. Picked up a win with every team. I've managed to go over 100 total wins, which is pretty cool. And I have to say, I play a very aggressive game with almost every team.
That's what I love to
quite
hear.
like to rush people forwards and try and smash people on the models front of the game, like as early as possible.
And you're finding that the hyper aggression is giving you more avenues. You know, Jason's been doing this for a long time, where when you shock and awe people, it breaks up their plans, and playing a cagey game might not work so well if you're expecting that turn one is super, super peaceful. Whereas, you know, there's a fair number of teams. We've had Alexa come on here, talk about Brood Brothers having, you know, out of sequence dashes, so you can get a Grenadier up probably like 16, 14 inches. So if your opponents are playing like a default game plan where they're going to move up and not think about your movement range, you're going to get tagged by something. And Hierotek Circle, because they have a full 6-inch teleport that is not wholly within, you can get pretty far up the board also.
Yeah, I've just found that actually almost every team has something like this. Like even Blooded with the Enforcer, because they changed him. It used to be like you pick an expended guy that dashes. Now he can just run up and smack someone, and then they dash, so you just get I don't think they can go more than 2 inches, but
no,
I think you can get 5 inches up the board with that. And honestly, that's often enough to threaten the mid board and keep your opponent like at the back, which is really
you gotta
nice.
keep people honest, right? It's basically there's like
Yeah.
a 4-inch bubble outside of your drop zone on most boards where you're pretty safe to move up, and then on the 6-inch deployments, that safety bubble is a lot smaller because the area of contact is much shorter.
Found this with Corsairs as well. I played Corsairs recently, and you can scouting reposition a guy and then have them dash forwards and then swap a ready operative with them. And that would let you start a guy 6 inches forwards, and then they can like run up the board.
And they get a free door action.
Yeah, free door action.
Or is Lightfinger's been changed? Was it removed?
Yeah, it's now control range doesn't.
Yeah, but you still need to pay the APL for it.
You don't need to pay the APL for it. There's still the comms though, so yeah, you can still buff with the comms. Of course, they have just changed the Shade Runner, definitely for a good reason, because he was able to just whiz right over the board.
Like still freely stab someone and then run away even further.
Yeah, and like ladders on Volcus, you could just place a ladder somewhere and just have your guys somersault over buildings and stuff. Really good.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of turn one aggression if people are playing lazy and just moving up to the mid board, kind of assuming that they're going to be safe because there's no real reason to go score on turn one. But I don't know, there's plenty of ways to lose a model or two for free.
Absolutely. If you're killing models turn one, it's really huge.
So, is there a trend across all of the aggressive play styles for your favorite TAC ops?
My favorite TAC ops? So, generally, I don't like the TAC ops that are actually about killing. I'm not actually that big on overrun or confirm kill. Plant beacons, of course, is very good because you'll have some kind of utility piece that isn't doing another thing, and then you'll score it. That's very much within your hands, anything that does free mission actions. Although, with Goremongers, I have been playing recover items.
Nice.
I am of the belief that I'm the only recover items player in the world, perhaps, but mostly I was doing it for like funny Lethal Company proxies that I have of them, as in like they're going out and they're picking up scrap. But it turns out it does work pretty well with Goremongers, and I don't know if you'd just be better off running overrun because they can spring to 3 APL. I did try plant beacons with the team, and I have to say it was annoying to have to spend an action point that you want to be used like killing opponents every turn to plant that beacon. And I found it very freeing to be able to bash everyone's head in, table the opponent, and then pick up everything at the end of the game. Because I found with Goremongers, you kind of always have at least 3 Goremongers left on the table at the end.
Unless you lost.
They have the... Well, unless you lost,
by then you
in
don't
which
even
case
care.
I don't think another tack up would make the difference. It's such a luxury to not have to worry about tack up until the end. It's more just like, okay, I'm going to surge over to this side of the board where the items are, bash your head in, and then I'll pick them all up.
Easy.
Yeah, and Goremongers are kind of uniquely situated because they can have 10 inches of movement on the last turn if they really need to. So you can really
fast.
Yeah, you can really move around the board pretty easily in case you are missing out. And one guy can stand between two objects and pick them up, basically.
That's right. So you need to have picked them up, but there is a tech. If you already have an item picked up, you can reposition over to a second item, drop the first one within control range, and then pick up the second one. Control 2 items at the end of the game, and they've both been picked up. So one Goremonger can hold 2 recovered items for 4 VP, probably 6 if you've got it as your primary.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And you don't like confirm kill, I suppose, on the expectation that because you're going to be spending all your time killing, you're not always going to be able to stand next to them where things are going to be contested, and you're not going to be able to score those first 2 points on turn 2 if people are playing a tight turn 2 game where they're also jockeying for position of those confirmed kill markers, because you are a melee team, so you're always going to be close up with your opponent.
It's mainly the turn 2 thing. It's a lot easier to deny as well, I feel. I feel like the opponent does have a good opportunity to run up to and place that 2 APL next to the token to stop you from scoring it, or like kill your Goremonger that's by the token, etc. But just
part of this feels like it's because Goremongers are an 8 operative team, so you're getting out activated a lot of the times. So even though you're very likely to drop a lot of confirmed kill markers kind of all over the board, your opponent might still have the activation count advantage, so they can still kind of at the very last activation stand between 2 confirmed kill markers and stall you from being able to pick them up.
Yeah, basically it's not super easy to guarantee. And also, on turn 2, I just find that a lot of the time people are playing a cagey game and they don't run people forwards for you to scoop up those tokens. Yeah. If you do get a kill, then it'll be deep into their territory.
And it's a fun note that plant beacons, you don't like plant beacons because you have to spend activations like going to go touch things, whereas normally elf teams are perfectly fine with plant beacons because they're playing the cagey game anyways. You only got 8 wounds, you're running around the edges of the board, you are finding avenues where you don't have to touch your opponent. But Goremongers, ostensibly they're kind of an elf team, but they're a melee-centric elf team with no piercing shooting, only crack grenades if you want piercing, and they have to get in close and hit people on the head and then heal after you hit them. So the time that you're spending doing plant beacons, you would much prefer to just kill the thing, because if you're going to stand around with those 8 operatives and get shot to pieces, it's not going to work out. So it's interesting that you went from it sounds like you've tried all 3. You found plant beacons not really all that great, and then confirm kill, your opponents had too much play, so you're now doing the corn thing of I'll just kill you first and we'll figure it out in post.
Basically, I don't know that the recover items is actually good, but I've seen a lot of success with it, so might be an odd one. It's definitely working out for me.
Yeah, that's kind of like a similar vibe that I've been having with wiretap, actually, especially with ratlings.
No, that's crazy.
No, look, hold on. Here's the silly business. Okay. With ratlings, you can use larcenous to do a mission action while you're within control range of an enemy. What you do is you scarper closer to someone, and then you charge an expended operative that has an engage order, and then use larcenous to wiretap them. And ideally, if you can catch another operative that hasn't activated yet, once they activate, you immediately score a point. And then if they end the turn nearby, you score another point. If you catch one ready and one expended operative inside of a wiretap, and the one that is expended has an engage order, it's just 2 points guaranteed. And then to make it even cheekier, you can have the dog go nearby to where you're about to charge, and then if they charge you to try to kill the ratling that has wiretapped you, the dog makes them fall back. It's ridiculous.
Alternatively, you could run surveillance and score 9 points.
That's true.
You have the little Spider-Man radar.
You wouldn't be able to style on your opponents as hard.
That's true.
Yeah,
No.
I mean, one would argue that Kill Team is about the top level competitive, precise game, but style points, if you want to
Big.
go for them, absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean,
the
you're
whole
speaking
reason
as
that yeah, I mean the whole reason I was noodling around with Wiretap was for Blooded, because I was like, I don't like. You've got a bunch of bodies you can throw away, and if you just run out and Wiretap, and like I had a few test games where I was getting 4 points, which was like as good or better than I would get with anything else.
But you could play a different tac op and actually win the game.
I would win most of those games. Like what
Wow.
with Blooded? What tac op do you play to get more than 4 points?
The Seek and Destroy infiltration.
yes,
Yeah.
they're Seek and Destroy and Infiltration, which is not the most
That's a
offensively
terrible
minded.
combo.
Yeah, that is a
Only
terrible
elites
combo.
can play that, unfortunately. Like Wormblade, Jaegers, there's teams that would be good if not for that dreaded combination.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, Hernkin have a new lease on life, at least at least they have a new identity. And they don't score their tac ops any better, but at least while you're playing them, you have a way to kill people.
And you were just already slaughtering people. Like Hernkin were very good at killing, and now they're just very, very good at killing, and still have struggled tac ops.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose the new game plan for Hernkin Jaeger is to move a couple guys up on your warriors, give them 3 APL, and then pass the turn. So they stay 3 APL in your opponent's side. If they charge them, you're like, all right, if you charge me, I'll kill you.
Interesting. Probably Champion. I did mess around with Champion in terms of like a kill confirm guy, as in not to be confused with confirm kill, but basically you sit a guy back, he's the champion, and then if your opponent runs an elite at you, you run in and shoot them in the face with a melter, or like you chip some damage off them first and then run in and kill them. I did this with Hernkin, and I used the Bladekin. So basically, they'd run in, they'd take some damage from the melee, maybe I'd chip some damage off them with a shotgun instead, and then they'd run in, stab them, get that kill, and score me the 2VP. It doesn't have to be used in this like swingy initiative manner.
Yeah, you're doing it as like the layer 2 counterpunch on basically pivoting between your 2 forward pieces, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're playing Goremongers, are you imagining everything as wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, kind of like how Felgor play or, old Deathcore played? Or are you doing a wall of bodies at the midline and then just aggressing as fast as possible?
So I was absolutely mind blown by quite how durable and killy Goremongers were. A tech player who is, I think, currently 3-1 in Command Point TTS tournament. He's only lost to I can't remember, but anyway, he did his sort of usual strategy. He went for the Psychomancer to try and set up this defensive thing, and the game result was 20-8 because I just completely steamrolled him with aspirants and everything. I think generally the plan is you sit the Blood Taker back and he acts like a comms. I sit him next to the Bloody Cadaver, so he's handing out the blood where it needs to be. And then the Inciter sort of runs around like an action hero, chipping wounds off here and there. He gives out the bleeding token, which is pretty nice because you can like run in, get 5 attacks, and then refill the blood of your guy to get relentless 5 attacks, which can help you punch up into big targets like elites or whoever else is tough, like Bulgrins, Ogrins, whatever. And the Impaler, I've heard some people say they don't like to take him. I find him really, really good. So first of all, he has stun, which is really, really nice for a melee team. You stun a 2 APL model, you charge everyone in. They physically can't fall back, and nobody wants to fight a Goremonger because you're halving damage. You have really good melee. Even like shoot into melee ploys do a total of 8 damage, and then you counteract and heal it all back. Played a game into Rattlings the other day, and he was like, wow, this is really, really difficult because I rely on this one shot, one kill type of thing.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised. to hear you say that you like the Impaler. It is one of the weirder operatives, so it's a little slow, but the idea of stunning someone and then dragging them into melee so that everyone can stage on them is pretty nice. I assume you've been having some success with it since it is very dicey, right? Like actually landing the critical is pretty random.
So you're trying to play it in this way of like, oh, okay, well, actually it whiffed that time and did nothing. That's fine. I'm going to spend an extra APL to dash out of the way, like back into out of line of sight or whatever. But when it does go off, and the drag ability is really, really impactful, dragging people off of objectives, out of control range of tokens, after smoke grenade into melee. Like you can, even if you have a guy that's out in the open, you can impale someone into their control range. So someone that they were relying on being able to kill later and then they can't. This kind of thing. Just I find that the Impaler has this utility value that is so incredibly good on the point side of the game, and just to manipulate the rules in such a way that you will not die.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried the Impaler in like 5 different games, and in one of them I shot his harpoon gun 3 times, and I have never moved anyone a single inch ever. It's just like it's just you get 2 hits, they get 2 saves, and then you're like, well, I guess I just wasted that activation, and that's been like 5 games in a row for me and the Impaler. And I'm just like, if I just trade him for an aspirant, and I'm just like, I'll charge out there, I kill this guy, I chain lightning charge into someone else, kill that guy, chain lightning charge into someone else. Way better than some silly harpoon gun that keeps on getting 0 damage.
I just find you have 2 aspirants or 3 aspirants if you run into the dark because you drop the stalker. They are enough to do that kind of thing anyway. But like, will the extra aspirant make the difference over the Impaler? Impaler's really good in the mirror match as well because you can shoot a Goremonger for 8, drag them, and then poke them for the final bit of damage with a follow-up fight.
Oh, that's right, because the Impaler, if you can drag a Goremonger into you, can just do an attack afterwards, right?
Yeah, because it's 8 damage cap with the shooting, but then, 3 that's halved to 2 on the melee. I've also just found Goremonger shooting is actually surprisingly really good. Like, not the auto pistols. Don't shoot the auto pistols. But the wrist chains.
The blood. Yeah, the wrist chains are good. The Blood Herald, Icon of Corn.
Yeah,
hitting on 2s.
Flamer shreds through 8 wound models, or it chips off a load from elites and whoever. Elves, really good against elves. So he's amazing for getting a double kill. Like the leader is such a power piece on the team. The Inciter doesn't really kill anything, but it's pretty reliable chip damage, which is nice to soften a target up and then bash their head in with something else. Most people rule the wrist chains as being able to get relentless or balanced from the melee ploy because it specifies it applies to melee weapons, not fighting or retaliating, and they're melee weapons that gain the keywords when they become ranged weapons. So, running up to someone and slapping them in the face with a relentless 4/5 rending gun. Very good
strong.
To chip a load of damage off.
Yeah.
Or just get a kill.
Yeah.
And, because Goremongers are a 7-inch move team that can also be 3 APL, you can have the 12-inch full threat range for basically any of your melee attacks as guns.
You said 12?
Well, you can move and dash, right? Because you can apply them together.
Yeah, but you can extra inch move and dash.
No,
make it 13.
13 inches. But then you wouldn't get reroll rules if you were doing a 3 APL and juicing.
No.
Yeah.
But definitely that threat range, like if you forward reposition an Impaler, and then it's like, okay, I've got 8-inch move and 3-inch dash because I filled his gore tank with cadaver. Like, where are you gonna stand that I'm not going to shoot you? Is it at the back of the board? Fine. Everybody on the Goremongers team is running up. I do find against teams with Seek Light as well, hiding on top of vantages, like you put ladders down, and then you can easily make it on top of the vantages with all of that movement. The Stalker just flips right over Stronghold, so he's fine. and then gets relentless for doing so. But standing on top of the vantages, especially against Sanctifiers, and even if they run up to you and throw their Sanctification orbs at you, you can counter that with a smoke grenade. So even if they manage to make their 3-up roll, throw a smoke grenade, and then you don't really care if they shoot you. And that gives them a good avenue for the flip to engage ploy. So you can sit like an Impaler or like a leader up there, and then flip them to engage on counteract and shoot somebody that's tried to run up.
Yeah, really focusing on the shooting side of the Goremongers to soften your targets up so that you're not going to just like only full health melee targets, right?
Yeah, I mean, for some teams you can just beat their faces in with melee, but also a lot of the teams that Goremongers struggle into are the ones who you take a lot of damage in return. Elites, Plague Marines with their injury ploy, really tough. Legionaries, Nemesis Claw. Was able to beat my dad's Warp Coven at the Easter tournament, and that was a really close one, right down to the wire. And there was a point where I looked at this and went, I could draw here, but I don't think either of us want that. So let's chance it on seeing if I can roll a crit. And I did manage to get it. Narrow win.
Big.
Yeah, it feels like Goremongers are basically just an elf team, but because they don't have the Pierce 2 weapons a lot of the elf teams use to break open the Astartes mirror or like the Astartes matchups, you have to find ways to abuse the Astartes before you go in. Because if you just go into a straight mono-a-mono fight with a Goremonger versus an elite, you could win, or you could also lose because you're 4 attacks versus 5 attacks, and it is just like very dicey.
It is a weird one because they feel like human elves, but their matchups are like sort of in reverse. So elves are really good into elites because they have this incredible firepower that they can run up and shred them with. And then they struggle into like Felgors or certain hordes or whatever. But then on the other hand, Goremongers struggle into elites but are really good into certain hordes. And like I play them into Felgors, you have a couple of tools to deal with them, but like you just beat them to death in melee really efficiently. You have the rake for damage on a charge. You have the access to severe to put them down with like a second fight after you kill them. Really, really good, strong stuff. And they're also good into certain elves. I hear Harlequins is probably very difficult, and I can see that because of their double strike and their fall back and shoot you and everything. But I played it into Corsairs, and that was a really easy match from the Goremongers side because Corsairs are looking at this like one shot, one kill type of thing. They're hoping to neuro disrupt you in the face. They're hoping to shoot you with a blaster or a fusion pistol or whatever. And Goremongers take 8 damage from that. It's like, okay, well, that's a fair amount of damage, but fine. And the power weapons don't kill you either. The saddest thing I remember was running into him with the Skull Claimer, the big axe guy. And then I bashed him in the face for 5 damage. And he went, oh, okay, I'll power sword crit you on the way out. And I went, okay, I take normal damage instead of the crit, which is 4, and then I halve it to 2. And his power weapon did 2 damage. And he was like, oh, that's not very good.
And then you can heal afterwards.
Harsh. Yeah,
especially because you just killed him.
That. I was like, guaranteed heal the 2 damage you did. He was like, what's it all for?
All right, y'all, hopping in real quick with another promotional item here. We've got a couple of events that we would love to see you at. They're both golden ticket events. Travis is running the New York Open the weekend of October 18th. We would love to see you there. Definitely swing by. We will have links to those tickets immediately available. You can find it in the episode. You can buy your tickets and see you there. The other event that I want to shout out is the Renegade Open, the golden ticket event in November 22nd in Minnesota. That's over in my neck of the woods. I'm planning to go to that one. We don't have the tickets for sale on that just yet, but it will be coming up soon. It's definitely happening. It's definitely a golden ticket, so mark your calendars. Fly on down to Minnesota and get some games with us. Win a golden ticket. If you are looking for episodes that do not have advertisements, you can hit it up on the Patreon and you'll get the ad-free versions there. Anyways, back to the episode.
Yeah, I mean, the Corsairs definitely have less fun matchups against these melee brutes. Theoretically, they had the tools for it, although with this new data slate change, some of those most obnoxious tools against the melee teams have basically been stripped fully out of the Corsairs. Before, they were relying on their Kernite Hunter to stand in the front with a Rosary Bubble, or the other melee piece with a Rosary Bubble that would go first, and you would just stand there. You'd have two melee pieces. You could take any charge, pretty much take all comers. And now it's pretty much been removed. Like, they can interact with it.
For the damage, like you could, he was a good piece for like slicing attack and then follow up shoot to actually kill them. But now he doesn't really do that because you need. Yeah,
now the Shade Runner has to like position in a way where it sees the target first and then it can go do it, which is fine. But then afterwards, you're generally stuck because you don't get your dash action afterwards. So you effectively have like a 3.5 inch movement bubble range that you're trying to use to tag someone for a little bit of damage and then run away, which generally is going to get you charged afterwards. So it's definitely in a weird spot now. So we'll see how the handful of Corsair players can adapt.
Goremongers are still amazing. The Kernite Hunter, he's still amazing. That instinct like ability where you pick someone and then so there's a couple of things about it. Firstly, that everyone knows with you pick someone, if they move up, you just charge into them, and that will really be quite difficult for them to deal with. Secondly, if they try and leave their guy on conceal, then you can reposition just forwards, and you run 7 inches up the board. They can't shoot you because they're on conceal, and then you can charge past them into your back line because it's like 16 inches of movement.
Yeah.
Also, I didn't realize this, but it gotcha'd me the other day. You can charge them even if he's expended. So my opponent ran up and expended Kernite Hunter next to my Hierotek Plasma Site. I tried to move on to the objective to secure it, and he was like, "No, I charge you." And I was amazed by that, and I was like, "Oh my god, that's really good."
Yeah, that's true. It doesn't have any tags on this operative needing to be ready. Which, for whatever reason, I think I intuitively expected it to be something like that, but it's definitely not there. So you pick someone, as long as that person moves, you get the extra movement. It's pretty good.
Yeah, and it doesn't restrict other repositions or charges like other abilities that do so generally do, and for good reason.
Yeah, I mean, the Corsairs have some of the craziest rules anyways in the game. Like, they got toned down, obviously, and I'm sure the Corsair players think it's rough, but maybe just play a little bit more fair and we'll figure out ways to buff them on the back end because they are a very different team from where they were last edition.
I think they were the strongest team before Blood and Zeal dropped.
I fully agree with that.
Could see that. Yeah, in terms of like the raw power of their rules, it's just they were a toolbox team, and once they're committed to lanes, switching all the way over to another lane tended to be a little bit hard because you set tools for certain matchups, and if they at the end of the day, they still had to roll dice for some of those things to go through. And then if you whiff on your Kernite Hunter's go first attack, you're like, oh, I guess I still die.
Yeah, I played. I lost in the finals of Goonhammer to what I called Void Dancer Troop with my Corsairs because I set up the fight first, guys. He charged me, and then I fought first and whiffed, and I was like,
the classic. It's like the classic Corsair problem that, Goremongers don't generally have as much of an issue of because you're carrying around your extra health and your extra rerolls or your whatever tool you need out of the toolkit. Goremongers just pull it out of their blood bag and then throw it at their opponent and hit them with it. And Corsairs, for as good as they are, as much as they had all the tools, you still had to roll dice, and it was generally you're getting one reroll maybe, and then you're like just attack rerolling everything and praying for it to work. So sometimes you're just rolling 8 dice and you land the 2 hits, and you're like, I guess I still lose.
That.
Oh but they're much better.
It's still an issue.
Yeah, so that's the thing that perpetually keeps Corsair down, even in this new edition that has changed so much and buffed them so much.
Yeah, I often liken Goremongers to Blades of Cain with Specialists, and I have to say, I think it rings true. The Sanguine Vitae is basically like the little aspect techniques with 6 different options that you can do available to you, and then you actually have operatives that do different stuff, which is really neat.
Yeah.
They do feel very much like an Elfie team. It's just that having watched them play and thinking about how they interact with the game, they have like the inverse thing of the elves because they're so much tankier than the elves, but their shooting is solid, but is not as guaranteed as the elf. Yeah, exactly.
No
like
fusion pistol,
as good
no
as the shooting
blasters.
is, as good as relentless 4/5 rending shooting is, your opponents can still roll 3 dice. Whereas when you're shooting with an elf team, you're like, I'm gonna AP2 you, so you get 1 die, and we're gonna guarantee the range is 8 to 12.
Yeah, there's no like, oh yeah, you're just dead. Like, I had a Corsairs match where I ran up the fusion pistol, shot an anointed. I just outright rolled 4 crits, and we were like, wow, yeah, he's gone.
Yeah, they just cease to exist instantaneously, which the Goremongers are basically never going to do. Everything that the Goremongers do is going to be a little dicey. Luckily for you, you have half damage, you've got severe if you need to, you've got balance if you need to. So you have all the words for any step that you want. It's just you're always going to have to roll dice.
Yeah, that's the thing with Goremongers. Because they're that durable, you'll whiff at some point, maybe multiple times, and you'll just kind of shrug it off. You'll be like, it happens. Thankfully, my whole game plan was not riding on that one thing going well. So you do a bit of damage to me, I'm still alive, I'm going to heal it back, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Are you worried about some of the new teams? Are you still going to keep playing Goremongers, or was Goremongers just like a little bit of a test? Because right now you're playing Hierotek Circle a little bit on CPTS, but are Goremongers going to be your in-person team for the foreseeable future?
So, as mentioned, I have played every team. I just want to give a lot of them a fair go, especially the ones that like interest me and seem like my kind of play style. So Goremongers, Hierotek, Warp Coven, all these ones I want to give a good go at a tournament. Probably my next team that I'm going to main will be whichever one I'm taking to the World Team Championships. So at the moment that might be Warp Coven, but sort of I need to discuss it with the team captain, figure out what like role I'm filling in the team. So it could just be Hierotek and then try and play like this roadblock kind of style where it's like, well, I'm not expected to win the match every time, but I'm expected to lose by very few points because all my models are coming back, and then I shouldn't get rolled on the crit op, the kill op rather.
Yeah, the only team that can rewind the kill op, and in very important ways, because as an 8 operative team, the breakpoints are favorable in touching that, which is really annoying.
They are so good for that reason, in my opinion. And like, you can even just take kill op as the primary, because it's like, well, I really should not be losing this, like losing more models than my opponent, because I've always got a second chance.
Yeah, every time I've played Hierotek Circle, I take kill up as the primary, exactly for that reason.
Yeah. It's just so good. Like the ability to stand back up and to go right. If you win initiative, then it's really, really good, because it's like, you kill my guy, he's going to stand back up over here, and then I'm going to shoot through him, and then I'm going to command him. And I've shot you twice with very powerful guns at the start of the turn. And yeah, starting it off powerfully.
Yeah, I mean, the real thing is that in the current edition, a lot of the Horde, or at least up until this last balanced data slate, a lot of the Horde teams have kind of been pushed to the periphery of the game. So having only 8 models has not really been too much of a disadvantage, because you're not really getting dinged 7 times, right? And you could shoot back a couple times, which makes it better anyways in this edition. But now I think with this last balanced data slate, I think Brood Brothers, Wormblade, Deathcore, Pathfinders are all in play on some level, and then Inquisition agents have been in play the whole time, but everyone doesn't want to play them because they got bored after they were overpowered. So the real question is whether or not in the next 3-month period of gameplay, if the Horde team players figure out a good way to interact with the game. I guess Farsucker Kinmen are also a 12 operative team with 12 activations for real, and then Gellerpox also ostensibly have been dragged back into relevancy by all the changes.
Yeah, I think there's one Horde team which sort of stands head and shoulders above the rest right now, of course. The dreaded Sanctifiers. I know you've heard they've been fixed. All the Sanctifier players are telling you, no, they're balanced now because we're not killing
No,
everyone.
they're still going to be cracked. You just play super cagey. I think from what I've heard, we've been on the podcast a couple times. We've had Command Point Shane on here. We've talked to Alexa on Brood Brothers. There's like 2 avenues on the Horde teams. One for Alexa, you yeet a dude up and you play turn 1 hyper aggressively and force your opponent to interact with bait pieces early on and then counterpunch them with all the power of 14 dudes shooting at a single guy afterwards, which is perfectly real. Pathfinders, I guess, get to do this. And then the other strategy is to play hyper KG and then not start the game until the out activation phase of turn 2, which is what Farsockers were doing with Shane.
And Sanctifiers just do that so well now. Unless you're into, a 12 activation team like Brood Brothers or Vetguard, like
Pathfinders, Vetguard, Inquisition
Pathfinders.
Agents can't do it. Gellerpox can't do it.
I think, but then you're not bringing Kassakin, so.
To be fair, I think Inquisition, there's room for you to look at the matchup against Sanctifiers, realize you don't want to get out activated, and then not play Kassakin.
Yeah, potentially. But for sure, like this ability to just sit at the back of the board, wait for your opponent to do everything, and then, because it's turn 2, like if you run Contain, if they've moved anyone into your half, everyone pushes up again because they can all move twice, and then you melter them in the face with Relentless, and then Severe, blah, blah, blah. It will go very well, I think.
Yes. Sanctifiers are still definitely going to need a tap. They've just lost the ability to shock and awe people on turn 1 in a kind of boring way, so they still have to play the game fully honestly. Your opponent knows what's coming now because it's going to be in the out activation phase, and Sanctifiers probably still do push out a lot of the Eldar teams or Elf style teams from really relevancy, I think, at an upper end of play for the time being.
They are absolutely still the best team in the game.
And you feel like on Goremongers, you've got a fair matchup into them. I think we touched on it a little bit ago. But how do you feel like that matchup is? Because me and Jason have played it a little bit, and I've seen it in person, and I've played it a little bit in person. And like in my mind, Sanctifiers just smush Goremongers by playing like huge cowards and lighting you on fire.
So the one really huge thing is Blaze, right? Like, it's infuriating as Goremongers that they gave Sanctifiers specifically a really, really good way around that 8 damage thing, which is the ability to shoot you for 8 damage and then do, on a 3-up, kill you when you try and activate. Which is really painful for Goremongers because they need that, like, durability to get value. That being said, I've played 3 matches of Goremongers versus Sanctifiers, always from the Goremongers side. I lost the first one. I won the second one, and then the third one I played against Serkan, who's one of the UK's best players, and I did manage to win that one by 1 point. So it's difficult, but this hiding on the vantages strategy is actually really good against Sanctifiers. They do have a weakness, which is that unless they bring the plasma, they don't have any long-range shooting. If they bring the plasma, they don't have the melter that is always in sermon range, so that's kind of fine as well. So yeah, the ability to like hide on vantages and then smoke grenade up if they throw the piss orbs at you is pretty good. And then Goremongers actually do have that kind of like damage output to actually punch through the Sanctifiers and kill enough guys and actually like contest them in terms of durability and damage output.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with that. I think Goremongers have the extra mobility advantage on like the raw mono to mono thing, and once you know, like, because there's like 2 different ways to use the lead the procession ability. You're doing it like the beginning of the turn to give yourself the most threats, the most threat saturation possible, or you're doing it at the end when your opponent has done activating. And generally, I would expect that against the Goremonger matchup, you're holding, most of it to the end and then trying to get your 3 activations with all of the juice on your opponent, which is pretty annoying. And then in the middle of the turn, you're using it to like, oh, I've messed up on something. We're going to reposition and get out of position, which is not what Sanctifiers want to be doing.
Well, Goremongers do have the the
Counteract charge.
flip to engage counteract thing, which is a good counter to this whole like running forwards, and of course the crazy 10-inch charge range that will compete with this whole ridiculous double move shenanigans. But yeah, it still is definitely very tough being out activated by this team that moves so far.
Yeah, you're getting out activated by the only team in the game that can reposition twice before shooting you or fighting you or doing something else. And against the Goremongers, you really don't need to go to fight them because they're going to have half damage up. They're going to have all this random stuff. So you just have a bunch of dudes with flamers just lighting everybody on fire, trying to get your guaranteed crits in so that you can blaze your opponent out rather than trying to actually fight them fairly.
The craziest thing about Sanctifiers is I feel like they would still be good without the double move.
Yeah, I would expect eventually we're going to end up in a spot where they get a reduced range reposition charge fallback, and I think that would still be very good. It would still feel unique, which I think is the important thing. Like a 3-inch move or a 4-inch move would still give them their most disgusting lines, but it would trim out probably like the most annoying parts of their gameplay because it's not going to be 14 inches of move or 17 inches of move. It would be, 10 or 7.
I have to say I'm surprised what's happened with damage reduction this edition. So last edition, Breaches released and they were very good on release because they had this minimum of 2. And then they went around with every team that had a minimum of 2 damage reduction and changed it to minimum of 3. Because it was understood that all of these 3 damage weapons, these 3/3 shotguns, these bolters, really, really struggled into teams with that kind of damage reduction. And that it was a toxic ability. And it's been brought back for the new edition. For Sanctifiers, they made the change to Breaches to revert them to that, which is a bit sad to me. They have done that with Hunterclade. And I have to say it seems a bit strange because it kind of feels like there's a lesson here that hasn't been learnt.
And, as an Imperial Navy Breacher's former main, I'm sure those changes it's still not enough, right?
Yeah, I also just wish they were taken in a different direction. Like, yeah, it would be nice to run forwards and be this scary threat of dual activate, kill everything. But now it's just like, yeah, I'm just kind of waiting in my half patiently, twiddling my thumbs with damage reduction until you're done and I can shoot you and maybe do a bit of damage. But
it sounds like the being proactive has become the new law of Dan.
Yeah.
So, having said that, that's the thing that you've been really interested in doing. What's your favorite alpha strike that you haven't talked about so far? We talked about Hierotek Circle, doing a reposition, commanding the underlings, moving up, getting teleported, shooting someone twice through, your Apprentech or your Hierotek, doing the shoot and then command shoot. We've talked about, I touched again a little bit on Alexa's Brood Brothers. You get your out of phase activation, you do your reposition. Everyone knows about the Hearthkin one, which has been nerfed pretty strongly.
Which has been changed, probably for the better, because that team is really good without having to do the alpha strike. Yes. So it's nice that it's not like a dicey
probably for the better. We removed that one. Pathfinders have a really gross chance of hitting 6 times if you haven't paid attention. So between the extra inch of movement, your drone's already having 8 inches of movement, comms and a reposition and recon sweep, which gives you 1 board side move up 3 inches. You can really chance it on your drone controller getting to go twice at the very last activation and the very beginning of the next turn, and just chucking an ungodly amount of dice at someone because your big drone is doing 15 dice and then your gun drone is doing 12 dice, and both of them will have ceaseless and both of them will probably have balance now.
Yeah.
Those are all really good, but I'm sure there's a couple other ones floating around that you have enjoyed. You mentioned Goremongers, being able to juice someone with a blood tank and then eat yourself.
It's kind of hard to say because I feel like they have done a good job of toning down alpha strikes, which is definitely for the better.
It feels like to me it's more like beta strikes now towards the end of Turning Point 1 or the middle of Turning Point 1, after someone has kind of lazily not asked a single question to their opponent, like, how far could you move? Like, you've never asked that question. It's like, oh, I'm just going to move up assuming I'm safe, and your opponent's like, okay, I'm going to pull out the big ruler, and they're going to pull out like a 17-inch ruler, and you're like, oh, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I do my best to be fair to them. Like, you put both of those models next to each other, that's within torrent range, and they're like, "Yep." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll run up and torrent you with the with the shredder that I've run forwards." And they're like, "Oh, you can torrent me." It's like, yeah. So that's hard to say, but probably of the ones I haven't talked about, let's have a think. Probably just like the Stalker, like the ability to flip over stuff. People talk about parkour team in terms of what you can do with jumps and stuff in the current edition, and I have to say it is pretty fun. Like just just to sort of run everyone over the top of walls and stuff. I guess let's call it the Chaos Cult one with their winged. You can fling a torment over walls, especially if you spend deploy to sort of spring that winged rule out of nowhere. So that's a really fun one to just leap over an entire stronghold.
Oh, interesting. Because you get up to the top part of the building and then you just move off and then drift slowly down, ignoring the building and all the drop rules and all the walls.
Yeah, that is pretty strong. At this time, I would like to sneak in a little fun nugget that I got from my friend Taz about the Insider, which is that the bleeding token does not have to come from the pistols. So you could, there's all sorts of ways you can work with this. For example, you throw the frag grenade, you hit multiple targets, you make them all bleed, and then you charge someone, you rake them, that also makes them bleed. So you can spend one to rake them.
Next to them.
Yeah, and then immediately get it back because you made them bleed. And now it's like between shooting the pistol, which weirdly, it's better than the blooded meltagun. It's it's a pretty good shooter. Ceaseless.
It's a reliable
rending.
shooter. It might not output the guaranteed 12 damage that you want out of a meltagun, but it'll pretty much always get 6.
And there's no meltagun that guarantees 12. It's meltagun gets you 6 and then spikes into 12. Whereas this will be you get 6 all the time, and you hardly ever get below that, and you sometimes get more than that because I've had plenty of 8 damage shots with the Insider. But it's you shoot someone, you do 7 damage, you charge and rake, you do 2 or 3 more, and then you fight them, and you'll kill an elite with that. It's crazy.
Yeah, the frag grenade is a fun touch on the Insider.
Yeah. One sort of wonders when an opponent will let you have that kind of big blast you're hoping for. In theory, the Galapox player leaves everyone in this big clump of 15, and you hand out 15 bleeding tokens in one activation. But yeah, I do feel like on Volcus, it's harder to avoid blasts than it used to be because there's this long line of cover. You really need to sculpt your board to be able to split up your operatives, and I think that's a layer of the game that now that some of these teams have unlocked the turn one kind of I make it up 16 inches, you can't just use the terrain that's on the board to get fully safe. I'm just going to move to the next stronghold. You're well, some teams can get to that cover line. Jason's been doing freaking obscured shots from the other end of the board for the entire edition, and it's not that hard if you're trying to get cover from directly in front of you for someone to cut an oblique angle and the next closest piece of terrain is fully 1.5 inches pretty obviously because you're only getting cover from the 60 degrees in front of you. I don't trust light cover. Never have. It's just you stick an octave behind light cover and then some guy with ignore obscuring snipes you from across the map because they're on advantage.
Yep.
Yeah. That's what the heavy barricade's for, your best friend. And then your other best friend is the light barricade with with a smoke grenade and a prayer. Yeah.
Definitely Felgors used to trust light cover because it would be retain 3 dice. So that seemed to work out for them.
Thank goodness we removed some of those really obnoxious things.
Yeah. They're dead and it's all John Ree's fault.
okay. I suspect that none of us are going to mind too much that Falcor have been nerfed so hard. I still think they seem playable for what I can tell. They're just, you can't just hold W and walk at your opponent.
The cool kids are in town. Goremongers. They replaced Felgors as the cooler melee team.
They're definitely more stylish. A Felgor conversion into Goremongers also would make sense. Chop off all their legs, give them the Impaler legs. Yeah. Felmongers, why not?
Absolutely.
How have things been going in the UK since, World for you? There's tournaments going on all the time. Me and Jason do our week-to-week stat show for our Patreon listeners. And, we bumped into seeing you doing well in a couple tournaments. That's why we decided to try to get you on, because Goremongers are a new topic. And especially now because the data slate is kind of Brave New World the whole game. How have things been going in the UK? Is the data slate going over well? What tournaments are you thinking about going up to in the near future for anyone who is interested in, maybe seeing you out there or just getting some games in?
Ooh, so in terms of which ones I'm planning to go to, I'm currently in the middle of exam season. So much as I love Kill Team, probably best to try and wait until the exams are over for me to go back to it. But probably I'll attend the Turning Point Tactics one in June. Maybe a couple of others, I'm not too sure yet. Definitely the World Team Championships in August is the plan. And then in terms of how things have been going in the UK otherwise, pretty well. I think most of the top players here have decided they want to be the guy that beats Sanctifiers rather than the one who's playing Sanctifiers. So it's sort of like a mad dash to figure out which teams counter them. I know Bart's Sanctifiers have been seeing some success into them. Of course, as I was talking about with Goremongers, I didn't quite manage to get the match at Easter, but I was sort of hoping that, that I'd run into them and maybe be the person to put them down. Tom Robinson, he beat Sanctifiers with his Aquilans. I know John Rees is playing Plague Marines because he thinks they're a good counter to both Sanctifiers and Goremongers, which is definitely a respectable way to play. Just counterpick the new teams that everyone's meta chasing. My dad is going for Warp Coven. I was talking about that with him as like a potential counter because you can stack Dev 1 on the Blast thing, and then it's 2-3 Rending Dev 1, which actually can put Sanctifiers down. Angel of Death for the double counteract with Jeweler and everything. I mean, the chain swords are 3-4, but then you double parry them and just chop them in half. I know Nick is playing Chaos Cults, which he says he's struggling into Sanctifiers a lot, but I know Alexa seems to think they are a good answer because the Sanctifiers run forwards and try and get you, and then you run all your devotees into them, stab them in the face, and mutate.
Yeah. It does seem like as good as the Sanctifiers end up being, there's plenty of range to interact with them. At least they're not just the God Kings among men.
Yeah, and I feel like Phobos has a decent matchup. I still haven't done the match of Phobos versus Sanctifiers, but like guard is a pretty big thing to keep them from running all over you, and the Incursor Marksman can do that anywhere with just an outrageously good shooting profile. And when they get close, they want their rerolls, and you can just turn that off with the Voxbreaker.
Do you believe in the 2-3 bolters though?
When you're like piercing and double shooting and lethal 5, and you can spike an extra D3 damage. They're alarmingly killy.
Interesting.
I think the core point is, just like the Goremonger matchup, the most important thing is actually trigger discipline, and you just shoot them a second time. Like the first one won't kill them probably ever, but the second one probably will. And Goremongers run into the same issue where, Phobos are running away from you and you're trying to get into them. You can definitely catch up with them, but then the Phobos, when they're shooting, they're taking risk-free shots, and then they have balance to do the counteract. So Sanctifiers run into similar things, except they're much worse against guard, where like your lead the procession and suddenly someone just gets shot.
And fully killed by the marksman.
I've not played against them in the hands of anyone I thought has like truly figured them out and understood them yet. I did give them a go into my dad's Warp Coven, and it was like, okay, this is a team that can keep up with Sanctifiers because of the whole like teleport back and everything. But I'm just finding that the game's like very much in my hands. I'm not going to move forwards unless I'm happy that I'm taking a shot that's worth it. And that's really good for me because I've got contain, etc., etc. So I think Sanctifiers may not be unbeatable, but it's going to be a really uphill struggle into anyone who's really good with them. One of the people left in the Command Point TTS tournament that I'm worried about is a Polish guy who was at World Team Championships, and he's using Sanctifiers. He's already taken down a strong Hierotek player, so maybe things don't bode that well for me. But I'm thinking about maybe what I want to do with this whole Deathmark guard strategy, and then if they try and have the audacity to run everyone up, I'll shoot them in the face.
Seems fair to me.
Yep, seems good.
I mean, if you can manage to tag the Confessor with a Deathmark, I guess, then there's potential to Deathmark him for the rest of the game and keep shooting at him. They can only get down Mr. President so many times.
Are true. And the Chronomancer, you can take Blast 2 and really ruin someone's day.
Yeah, so that was the other Hierotek player's strategy. I think he ran like Tesla as well. And he was relying on this like Tesla Blast double shoot that they couldn't get down Mr. President to finish the job on him. But
oh yeah, I'm not thinking about using Teslas because I think when you want to shoot them, you need them to die and go down. But
yeah,
having the Chronomancer's threat of Blast 2 means that when you're doing the teleport yeet, you can still get a big, like you add threat and you force them to space out, and when they're a little bit more spaced out, you can pick them apart a little easier.
Yeah, and they have a harder time like staging when they need to spread out.
Also stun.
Yeah.
Stun's really good against him.
Although the Blast weapons are 3/3 damage, so going down to 2/2 seems really punishing. I don't know.
It's 5-on-3, 5-on-3, 2/2, Blast 2, Lethal 5, Stun, Magnify. But it's really the stun that will really put a hamper on them. Because if any of those operatives get stunned, they're just not going to do anything relevant.
And then, like, if you do 4-6 damage and then zap with a Tesla Weave, that'll also just like cook someone in a key spot.
Yeah, so it's definitely an interesting matchup. I'm excited to see how it goes and see where everyone is going to interact with Sanctifiers in the new world, because they are at least not going to kill you in the first activation of the game or the last 3 activations of turn 1 anymore. So now you have time to plan out a plan. For anyone who is looking for strategies against Sanctifier, setting up the obstacle course is probably not actually that bad of an idea, because it stalls out the longest bomb charges at the end of turn 2, or any of the crazy things you want to do, like barbed wire, 2 barricades, put them at the midline, force them to pay 3 and 2-inch taxes. Perfectly reasonable plan.
Now you can watch your team lose slowly rather than very quickly at the start of the game. It's not quite that bad, but it's definitely going to be who can take down Sanctifiers will be the coming meta. So get out there, play some Plague Marines, play some Angels of Death, play some Warp Covenant, whoever else to try and
don the power armor to beat back the hordes.
Or play elves if you're really crazy. You can then take advantage of everyone who's playing the elites, but that might not go super well if you do run into the Sanctifiers.
Okay, the elves have new hunting partners with Tempestus Aquilons and Vespid now, outnumbering them by a fair bit and just getting them on the outer edges.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I do think Aquilons will be like B tier. I don't know that they have the kind of pizzazz that like the top level of teams do. There's no reanimation, no double move, no like.
They're a little straightforward. They're very honest. I think that's kind of their biggest issue. They're good, but they're honest, and the extra operative just means that they can actually start being honest earlier and not just instantly lose because your first shot went wide, which is kind of what happened before, I think.
Vespids, I still don't believe in. I mean, sure, that's another operative to whiff with and not roll any crits and die. Done nothing for their threat ranges.
I think it's important for Vespid to have the throwaway, even more important than Tempestus Aquilons to have the throwaway piece, because then now you at least have the chance of everyone in the back line shooting and then moving into safety, whereas before, everyone moved into getting shot afterwards. Range, you only had 9 guys, so you're like guaranteed at some point in 9 operatives on 50-50s to lose lose the 50-50. At least now you can maybe take a longer game plan where you have one guy die and then everyone else shoots and then runs away. I don't think it's good, but it's at least there now.
I don't want Vespids to be good. I think they'll be a pain in the ass if they are like strong, but I'm not that excited by the prospect of an extra operative because I feel like the team has issues and I feel like that's not done very much to address them.
No, I think that one is really just a band-aid issue. I suspect that because they have the longest, they're like of the longer life term teams, like they'll probably get touched a couple more times. Probably, I would assume that they need to make the points do something new because the points have been kind of, yeah, for anyone who's still trying to make Vespid work, if you are taking the thing that lets you roll 2d3 dice at the beginning of the turn, stop taking it. It's completely useless. You've never ended a game of this edition after the changes where you haven't had like 7 points left over. Just do something else. Get frag grenades, get crack grenades, do something.
Heavy barricade.
Yeah, heavy barricade. I feel like Vespids should have the ability to change accurate to severe. I feel like that would be a really nice rule for them because then it's like, okay, it's less about spiking with the devastating now, and now it's like, okay, I will get 1 crit. So it's still hitting on 4s. They still probably won't overwhelm you with a bunch of hits, but it will be a lot more consistent. And Vespids have these abilities that give them accurate, like Aselli and hopping up on top of advantages, and the warriors and the communion points, I think. Yeah.
I think if the communion points were a little bit more interesting, I think that would probably help the team. Because right now, I think the raw stats work out to them probably at least being 40% team, because they've been a 20% team for pretty much the entire edition. But they're a little dull because you've got this whole table of things that are just restrictions, and they were restrictive, and now they're not restrictive. So now they just kind of feel like, just a reminder that doesn't do anything. Whereas, if you made it a little interesting, that would be good.
Trading player agency for raw power does not excite me as a team that I would be looking to play. I got my win with Vespids, and I was like, that's it. Back in the box forever. Might as well super glue them in there.
Yeah, it's too bad because the models are gorgeous.
Yeah, they're cool. And they're unique. Like, having funny flying bugs is cool. I like all of the like wasp paint jobs people do with them.
Yeah. All right. I don't have anything else. Jason, you have anything else you want to ask Dan before we head out for the day?
No, I think we touched on everything that I want to touch on. Is there any final shout-outs that you want to include, Dan?
I'll always feel
Your
guilty
YouTube
when
channel.
I remember later what I should have said. Yeah, my YouTube channel, Captain Kill Team. I'll upload something there at some point, probably with Bart talking about the data slate is the plan. But stay tuned for something or other.
All right, everybody.
All right. Thank you very much for having me. It was good to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. And as always, thank you, listeners, for listening until the end.